My name is Adam Vervaeke. I am a CCAS Contact Center Product Marketing Manager at Intermedia. Before we jump into it, just some real quick housekeeping. At the top of your screen, roughly in the middle, you should see three icons there. You've got the emoji icon, which allows it. There we go. Love it. Very quick on the uptake. Allows you to tell us how you're feeling. We always encourage that. Thank you. That's awesome. Throughout the presentation, we've got that question mark box. That's for the Q&A. It allows you to submit your questions in a nice structured, orderly format, and we will do our best to get to all of those later in the presentation. That third icon looks like a handset rather. That's just an audio mode switch. So, if you're having trouble with the audio, you can switch to dial-in. You can switch in to calling in via the PSTN or what have you. Now, my co-presenter today is Scott Zumbahlen. He's in cloud services and sales at Poly, and he manages the Poly relationship with us, with Intermedia. Scott's going to be sharing some really intriguing insights that Poly has on the next normal and the future of remote work, what that looks like. So with that, Scott, let me turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone for your time today. Again, my name is Scott Zumbahlen. I live in Denver, currently smoke-filled Denver, Colorado. And we're going to talk a little bit about work from home and everything that's transpiring in the market today in terms of, what are some trends we're seeing? What are some opportunities that, your customers are probably looking for you to solve? So those of you that are not familiar with Poly, we are the combination of Polycom and Plantronics, merged about a year and a half ago. We are headquartered in San Jose and Santa Cruz, California. We do all of our development and manufacturing in North America. We have development sites in Texas, Western Canada, Colorado, a few other points outside of California. And we've had a partnership with Intermedia now for many years, going back to some of their acquired companies that they've put together over the last many years. What we wanted to, and where we fit in the Intermedia portfolio is with a variety of devices that allow your customers to actually access into the application, whether that be a VVX phone, whether it be a Savvy or a Blackwire headset, depending on their work style and use case. And we'll talk about some of those use cases today. A conference room device like the Trio, or a analog device like the OB300 to get analog devices, faxes, and other things like that connected into the UC system. So that's a variety of the technologies that we're integrating to Intermedia today. And I think the emphasis is on services for every work style and space, because there are a variety of work styles and space that we want to help support. So obviously a lot has transpired for us all over the last 6 months. I think there was a comment by a CEO of Microsoft that said, we've had 2 years of digital transformation in the last 2 months. So all of our customers are looking at new strategies. Legacy premise-based PBXs are really not keeping. They haven't been keeping up for a long time, but really since they don't offer much remote connectivity, it's really forced a stampede to cloud services. As a specific example, so a lot of companies were having to really quickly respond to what is the new norm. And today we want to talk a little bit about what's not only the new norm, but what's the new next. What's the future going to hold for us? I think that when we look at this digital transformation, we really look at a number of things, and it really comes down to a respond, redesign, and reinvent type of scenario that a lot of our customers are looking at. How do you respond to the immediate need? And I think that's something we've all been helping our customers work through over the last quarter. And that gets into anything from a IT manager or a company's policy being, hey, for work from home, we'll give you a $20 stipend to help pay for your internet access, and everything else is on you, to like go buy whatever you need to get your home office going, and we'll figure it out later. So, but IT organizations and companies are trying to figure out what are those investments, what's being used, what's going to happen in the near future when we transition back, or are we going to be transitioning back to the office? If you look at some of the stats that we tend to think about, is that we've had, like, I think there's some stats from Frost and Sullivan that talk about 30 million work from home users in pre-COVID. That bumped up to 270 million work from home users now, and they think it's going to even out to post-COVID possibly be about 160 million work from home users. So not everyone's going to go back to the office. There is a new norm, but it's not necessarily binary. Some of those users might be working at office 3 days a week, home 2 days a week, etc. So how do we enable connectivity and allow them to do their job? Their job is not to use a UC application. Their job is their job, and the UC application just allows them to actually be facilitated and hopefully make them more productive. And that's what I think our customers are struggling with is, how do you still make your important business decisions to grow your business? How do you keep the company culture? How do you manage those remote employees? And I'm not necessarily talking about managing from an IT perspective, but there's a lot of new managers that are new to managing people remotely, and they're trying to figure out how to be more effective at it. It could be that many people on this call have been working from home for a long time, or at least a period of time pre-COVID. We have a lot of our customers that's a new concept for, and we need to understand their concerns and hopefully give them the tools to make them more effective. Right. So, we see a lot of opportunity to help our customers get back to some resemblance of normal. And if you look at the didn't mean this event site, if you look at the going back from the respond phase to the redesign phase, what does that redesign actually really look like? It's not going to be as simple as returning to the office. It's probably going to be that for some, but for some, it's going to be now a hybrid model where I need to keep my home office going, but I also want to return to the office. A lot of people really don't like working out of the home office. They get a little, they like the social interaction. They like getting away from, barking dogs and the, neighbor cutting the grass and stuff like that. So, what can we do to help them redesign their work experiences and give them the flexibility to kind of just get their job done regardless of where they are, right? And what are the, when they return to the offices, a lot of times there's conference rooms and group gatherings. How do we, from a technology perspective, enable those to be much more of a low touch engagement? How do we manage a conference room? We've heard customers saying that they're going to take all the chairs out of a conference room. So the meetings, everyone has to stand. They want it to be shorter meetings, and they want to make sure that there's only, say a given conference room normally seats 12, maybe they might limit participation to 6. How do we use technology to help monitor that and enable more of a hybrid where we have some people in a conference room and maybe some people left at their desk? So those are all the types of technologies that your customers are probably going to be looking for some help in trying to figure out.
It's interesting, Scott. It's almost like circumstances are forcing not only, as you say, a response, but on the redesign phase, what you're seeing is we may, and we'll touch on this a bit later, we may actually be entering a series of better business practices being forced by this. It's not just about health, but as you said, you got a more focused, a stand-up meeting, a literally stand-up meeting where you got topics, you're hitting them fast and hard. Who needs help? Where are we at this week? Is it a sprint? I'm all for it. And, it's interesting that sometimes it takes external circumstances to force that kind of change. But, the outcome may be positive in the end in, more ways than one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think that there's always been some companies that haven't been embracing work from home. And I think there's always a concern that, if someone with kids, dogs, spouses, et cetera, there are a lot of distractions. Does that make an employee less productive, or does it give them a better life work balance and make them actually more productive?
Right.
I think there are people that feel strongly one way or the other. I've been working out of my home primarily for the last 15 years. So,
Same.
I think I personally obviously feel that you can be pretty productive in that environment. So, but if you look at this again, returning to the office in a hybrid fashion, and this is a study from the Society for Human Resource Managers. This gives some indications on what they're getting. They're pulling their organizations that are part of that society and hearing, what the plans are. First of all, a lot of people haven't announced their plans to work from the office. A lot of people are in that wait and see mode. A lot of people are knowing they're going to limit the number of employees back in the office when they do move back to the office, at least initially. And with staggered start and stop times, staggered, limited common area times for breaks, etc. Some of this is indicative of contact center or call center application type workers, but it also impacts all types of workers. So there is a lot of still a lot of unknown, but a lot of second guessing, and they need and part of that, the flexibility that specifically Intermedia can bring, and I think in conjunction with our endpoints adds a lot of value. But with a lot of people using AnyMeeting as really, it's becoming much more prominent as a really core business enabler, versus where a year ago we might, Unite might have been it, and it still is obviously an important aspect, but applications like this are just becoming even more important. I think some stats from channel partners that talk about the use of video, and it's really, we're now on video calls with our grandma, and we're doing virtual happy hours with our family and friends. People have gotten over the hump in terms of being comfortable with video. It's really the change, and it's been a sea change over the course of the last 6 months. So if you look at part of that redesign phase, we have to identify by worker style. Some essential workers have to be in the office. Not everyone has that luxury of working out of the home. How do we make that more effective? Give you an example. We have a very large manufacturing plant that we own and operate, a 1 million square foot facility in Tijuana, Mexico. We had to close it down for 2 weeks in April to invoke a couple of things. One was social distancing, so they had to put in the plexiglass and kind of stretch out the manufacturing lines. And they also had to go to 2 shifts, so we could not only keep up with current production rates, but actually increase them fourfold, just to keep track of the demand and primarily around our work from home enabling technologies. So those are, that's the redesign. Those are essential workers from our perspective that, they can't go home and manufacture our product out of their homes, right? So that's an example. But again, how, talking to your customers about the worker types, whether they are flexible workers, maybe they need set up at both home and office, or remote workers that are just going to be permanently home. So those are things we need to explore and ask about. And then there's the reinvent phase, where we do help them with planning for what's next. The next normal. The new normal is what we're all trying to understand right now. The next normal is, how is business forever changed? And unified communication applications are really, really a key part of that. How do we accommodate flexible working and continued social distancing with conferencing applications like this that are just easy to get in and out of? How do we create a seamless workflow between my home office and my office? And again, the ability to have a technology that allows for that. And one of the things you have to think about is, when you're in your home office, or when you want to go to the office at, your office, a lot of times you go there to get quiet. You want to concentrate. You want to be not disrupted. How do you replicate that in the home office? And if you look at some of our unique technologies that we bring to the table, we have applications like acoustic fence, which creates a sound bubble around you. So if I had my dog came running in, or if my kids or my spouse, or if the neighbor starts cutting the grass, all that sound will not become featured on this webinar because there is a bubble around me that just blocks all that sound off, a core feature and a unique feature of our VVX phones. We also have noise block technology that allows for a very similar way in a group setting in our trios. We also have in our headsets technology called cross conversation limiting, where if you have your headset on and there are people talking around you, the headset will only pick up your conversation and not the conversations around you. So, and again, all those technologies are pretty subtle, but they're very important in terms of allowing you to focus on the task at hand. And they just kind of live in the background and just do their job. And again, they keep the conference from and the meetings and the discussions and the conversations from getting sidetracked by, my rescue mutt that's named Lola that does like to come in and bark all the time.
I remember the first time we got a poly at a previous job, Scott, that had a sound fence and noise block, and it completely blew us away. I actually had a colleague go in the kitchen of the office and start banging pots and pans and gradually get closer and closer. I couldn't believe how close he got before it even picked it up. It was like, I know it's a silly real world test, but it really works. It's an amazing technology.
Yeah, there's some good videos on YouTube that really demonstrate the technology. Some of them are put up by our marketing team or a pretty good detailed explanation of it. There's a few others from some of our sales managers that emulate a zombie apocalypse and other things that look at it a little more jovial way. But there's some good tools online to allow you to kind of look at that feature functionality and understand really how it works. And it's an easy thing with our technology to actually use and demonstrate in real time. And it's all, again, it's unique to our platforms, but it's all obviously enabled and turned on by the Intermedia solution. So as we look to reinvent and create these new workspaces, this new collaboration environment, and again, some other important things to consider is the number of employees working at home, the percentage, by the end of next year as what the Society of Human Resource Managers is looking at, a substantial increase from what we're at today, and pretty much vast majority of employers are adopting a policy. So it's really important for us to understand what is that policy and how can we help them achieve their goals. I mean, that's where people are spending money at right now. One thing that we have been doing as a company is, we've had this research project going on for probably 6 or 7 years. And it comes from the Plantronics side of the house, where we really try to understand and grab quantitative information from our customer base on work personas. And this really feeds back to what we invest in terms of research and development and how we manufacture things moving forward. And over the years, we've kind of consolidated on, these 7 types of work styles. And this was something we started sharing with our partners probably about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And it really to help our customers understand, how can we make the UC rollout successful? How can we make adoption strong? How do we help you understand what are the different types of work styles? I think it's easy for us to get focused on our own work style and not think about how other people like to interact with this type of application or with their customer base. So we've identified these work styles down to who. And again, your mileage will vary in terms of what any one organization has in terms of these work styles. But these are a few that we consolidated down. And note that if you add up all the percentages, it adds up to 91%, because there's probably, what we found is 9% of the populace will not engage a UC application regardless. It's probably not outside their job function. So but obviously with a focus on flex, remote, and connected executives today, but these other work styles do exist, and there's more information on our website. But this can help you carry a conversation with your customers in terms of helping understand what kind of work style do they have. Not only the IT seller, that you're selling to, or maybe the executive buyer, but help them think about the other types of work styles in their environment they have to make productive in their job. So again, I think that's something that our tools enable inherently. Whether you're on the road or in an office, we've got we're kind of you pick the work style, and we probably have a solution for it. So with that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you, and take it away.
So much appreciated, Scott, and great stuff. I know before the webinar we were saying, it's funny, we really didn't design our presentations in tandem, and yet, there's a great deal of thematic overlap, and, hopefully you'll see a bit of that as we go along here. So look, Scott showed us this year has brought seismic shifts in almost every imaginable industry. And obviously one of the most notable changes has been in the area of remote work, which is central to the idea of a cloud contact center, right? So if we take kind of a before after split view of that shift, we get something like this, where yesterday remote work was kind of the exception. This statistic, Scott, blows me away. Like before, 3% or 3.2 to be precise worked with even some frequency remote. I mean, that's amazing now in hindsight. You think, well, how is that possible? But that's the way it was, right? And the change was forced, as we say, by external circumstances. Contact centers were centralized, right? That was the deal. Everyone's seen the classic, although now outdated, image of the small windowless room and all the agents packed in like sardines, and everybody's frantically juggling the inbound requests with outbound dialers. It's kind of a boil room scenario. Listen, it's history, right? It still makes for a good image, good movies, Hollywood, whatever, but it's just not the reality anymore. And you'd be managing those contact center teams in person, right? And the manager would be going station to station, often literally looking over shoulders, not because they want to be big brother, but how else would you do it, right? That's just the way it had to be. Whereas today, if we kind of shift over to the right-hand column, it's not the exception, it's the rule. Scott, you said it. You've got a whole bunch of work, perhaps not all, but a lot of workers still have to work from home. As you said, we don't know what that next normal is going to look like exactly. In fact, it's maybe better the one thing we have certainty about is that things are probably going to be continue to be uncertain, right? So the best thing to do is not plan for X or Y, but plan for flexibility, plan for change, because it's going to happen, right? It's something, if it's not this, it's going to be something else in future. And the vast majority of teams have gone remote, right? Again, kind of the rule rather than the exception. If we think of business impact here, it used to be you had somewhat predictable demand via established channels. Of course, you've got your peaks and valleys throughout the year. You have some idea of when they are. Agent productivity was the major measurement. I'm just going to be sensitive to time here and accelerate a bit. We were mainly focused on how productive are my agents being. And this one I don't like, but it was true. Contact centers, they were often seen as a cost center. Oh, this is a thing I have to pay for rather than a revenue generating asset. Shift over to today. Hey, we don't know what demand is going to look like. We got to keep up to demand. That means opening up new comm channels. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We're going to focus not on how busy are my agents staying. Let's look at customer outcomes. Stuff like retention, first call resolution. Like, what are we doing for our customers instead of being super focused on whether every last minute of the agent's day is occupied? And, kind of a mental shift there to a major strategic asset in the new normal or the next normal. So in sum, listen, it's tomorrow. It's going to be remote customer and employee interaction to a much greater degree. And again, customer experience is going to be the primary metric. And it's probably going to be delivered by largely, or at least substantially remotely managed teams. Okay. Listen, change can be scary. We know that, but it can also power superior outcomes. So we've got multiple studies here. They all they were published through Inc. magazine, and I believe they were conducted by our OWL lab. So obviously very well-regarded sources here. This first one is idle time, not just idle time in the context of contact center agents, but workers in general. What we find is that in-office workers reported being idle about 37 minutes a day. And that's excluding lunch and standard breaks. This is time when you hypothetically would be working, but for some reason you weren't. We won't get into why, but that's the way it is. Whereas remote workers reported 27 minutes of unproductive time. Now, 10 minutes in one day, not a big deal. But you multiply that by, Scott, what is it, 260 working days, something like that in a year, roughly? Right, multiply that by 260 days and by your number of agents. it's that's a big deal. So that's where your 27% reduction comes from. Next up, total days worked by calendar year. So this one is really amazing. 16 extra days annually. We're not talking about, hey, they get to the end of their 260 days and they say, I'm going to do an extra, 16 days right now and make it 276. No, we're talking about an extra hour here, an early morning there, a shorter lunch break there. And you get the cumulative equivalent of over 2 weeks of extra 8-hour days. And amazingly, they're doing this willingly. No one's holding their feet to the fire. Last one, again, being mindful of time. This is the likelihood of the employee staying with the company over the longer term. Again, decent uptick there. You might say, well, 13% isn't a huge bump, but let's qualify what we mean by long term. That's not a year or two. The response to this survey was, how likely are you to stay with the company for 5 years or longer? I think, Scott, we'd agree in today's labor market, hey, that's a pretty healthy stretch at a company, right? 5 years is pretty good. So there's a significant uplift there as well. It's not just the agents. The company also wins. You got a wide open workforce, right? You don't have geographical barriers to your talent pool. You don't have to say who's good enough and close enough, physically close enough in proximity. No, you say who's the ideal fit for this role. Optimize onboarding. When I came on board with Intermedia, I got a cardboard box, yay and yay. Probably didn't weigh much more than 10 pounds, up and running in an hour. Headset, various peripherals, best practices, guides. It's so streamlined. And again, energized employees. You've got remote workforces are often happier, more loyal, and ultimately more productive. I'm going to go quick here. A few minutes left. Some best practices, suggestions for a remote contact center. The first is the basics. Make sure agents and employees are, again, Scott, you alluded to this, dedicated workspace, right? If ideally a door that can be closed. I like having a door that can be locked, personally, if at all possible. But also high quality mic or headset phone. I'm actually using a Blue Yeti on my desk right now. I'm not using the headset. This is important. Scott's going to send me a poly phone, and we'll get that going for the next one. Clean, non-distracting background, proper breaks. Proper breaks, actually, elsewhere in the study, the remote workers gave that as their number one productivity tip. Optimize staffing for the remote contact center. So here, we don't just look at how many people can fit in a room, right? Now let's look at the key metrics. How many calls total are we receiving in a day? What's our average wait time for our callers? How about average handle time, rather? Like, how long does it take to deal with the call and then do the post-call wrap-up, classification, what have you, and move on to the next? Are we swamped with callbacks? Callbacks are a great thing, right? We've all heard this. Would you like to get a callback and retain your place in queue? But at the same time, if you're getting flooded with hundreds of those in a day, that may tell you something. You want to ensure you're set up to handle interactions via the channels your customers prefer. Voice is obvious. What about SMS? Do they use it? Web chat? I love web chat personally. If the agent's responsive, I think it's very productive, and I can go away for a couple months and come back, and it's not awkward. Whereas a voice conversation, just leaving the room for 2 minutes and coming back, it'd be weird. Email, perhaps even some level of social media integration. Inquiries get routed into the contact center queues through the major platforms. You want to make sure you're set up to integrate with the third-party apps that matter to you. Look, popular CRMs, obviously, and this contact center product has everything from Salesforce to Zendesk, Zoho, so on and so forth. NetSuite. But listen, that's not the only use case. You might want to use open APIs to integrate some kind of web app with various data points that you can pull out of the contact center application. There's a wealth of data there. You might want to use the connector framework to build an integration with some kind of events-driven app. Something to do with scheduling, perhaps. A quick one. There's a Slack integration available on a couple of the plans, and it's simple, but it's really cool. It looks at the contact center statistics in real time. It looks at, has a threshold been violated? Do we have too many people waiting? Do we have more calls than we do agents? And it pulses that alert to a selected Slack channel where, you got your managers and your agents in there, and they can all say, oh, well, we better jump on that. And personally, I love Slack. If I see something come up in Slack, I actually pay attention to it. So it's, these are some of the other use cases. Again, CRMs are critical, but they're not the only use case. take a look at real-time and historical data visualizations. It's great to see the tactical situation now. We've got shared wallboards, you've seen these, Scott, where everyone can access them remotely. It's just a URL. Agents and managers are all looking at the same set of data in real time. Not just how am I doing individually, but how we're doing as a team. Where can I step in and assist my colleagues, right? And also the big picture over time. You need to see those long-term trends. And finally, and I guess we'll wrap up on this point, scalability is crucial. Look, the phone has become the front door, and not just the phone, these other comm channels as well. Demand has become unpredictable, and this is going to happen again in some form or another. So one of the best things we can do is build in flexibility, build in things like on-demand bursting, where the system will automatically scale up to 50% additional capacity beyond the seats that you're subscribed to, in response to an unanticipated flood of inquiries. These are the kind of practices that there's no guarantee, but they put you in a better position to be prepared for the next normal. And how are we doing for time, everyone? Are we? I know we're coming up on the end there. Okay. Okay. Well, Scott, we can. Yeah, unless there are any questions for now, I'll just have a quick look.
I think you have one last slide that talks to some current promotions.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to skip this remote success one, just because there's a great deal of detail in there. So yeah, we've got a couple here. With the contact center, all right, we've got the free installation and free first month service. And Scott, I'm only going first because it's on the left. I'm not stealing your thunder. I'm just reading left to right. So it's installation and first month's service, which really comes out to 2 months free, which is hey, that's a pretty sharp offer. So, and that runs through, I believe it's September 30th. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that one, but don't crucify me if I'm off. But I think that's the deal. And Scott, we've got the poly one as well.
Yeah, in conjunction with the Intermedia channel team, we are running a sales contest for the next several weeks, where there'll be weekly winners based on number of Intermedia seats with poly attachment sold, with grand prizes over the course of the duration of the program that's running through the rest of this quarter. And again, that can be our phones, our conference room phones, our headsets, ATAs, all the poly devices that are integrated with Intermedia. So just a little contest to stimulate some activity. I had a question though regarding going back to some of the call center stuff. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of supervisors that are still maybe used to a certain way of managing their agents, right? And you take them out of the room and you now just distribute them. Now I know you guys have the right tools and everything to do that remote management, but from an execution perspective, and what do you see as some of the things to consider? I mean, getting those supervisors comfortable with kind of like today's technology, right? Because if you look at some of those people have been using, they may have an installed call center technology that's maybe a little older, and their remote tools are not as strong. So how do you approach stuff like that? How do you approach those types of people to get the comfort level up?
So personally, I find when there's a risk of overload, whether it's stress due to, as we say, unpredictable circumstances, whether it's the number of things to manage, uncertainty, what I would say is listen, as a team, really nail down the metrics that you want to focus on, whatever those are, and make your managers understand, listen, you don't have to be up. I'd hate to put it this way, but some of them, they want to get up in everybody's business, right? Like, it's not necessary. Look, just there's a certain calming effect to having a nice narrow focus. These are the 5 or 10 things I got to focus on. I have the tools. I could see right in front of me in real time. We're hitting where we should be, or maybe I need to adjust, take action. That's fine. But I think you can really help people be comfortable when you say, listen, here's the stuff that matters. Just focus on this. Put the rest aside. And I guarantee you, in time, you will become more comfortable. Don't spend too much time thinking about, oh my gosh, there's so much change, there's so much uncertainty. Yeah, there is, but that's not going to help you. Just be super focused on what matters, and we give you the tools to do that. And not only you, but your agents will thank you.
Yeah, adoption of the tools that any UC, a call center or video application have. We as I think as vendors, we do a good job of creating the tools, but then getting them to actually be effectively used. That's where folks on the call play a critical role in terms of you understand those use cases and helping your customers really get in touch with what technologies really can be brought to bear. It's a matter of getting the manager level, especially first line managers, comfortable with the new normal, right? That's what we see has been a big challenge for a lot of organizations. But
100%. Like, listen, the vast majority of this, let's be real, it's psychological. Yeah, there are really serious realities out there, of course, but again, like, if we allow ourselves to kind of get focused on the immensity of the problem, then we're not going to get anywhere. So for me, everybody's different, right? But what I always tell people is, if you can just narrow it down, don't try to do the view from 20,000 feet. Not for now, right? We can get back there one day, hopefully. But for now, um, just stay focused on what matters, and eventually human beings are really resilient. You're going to adjust, right? You're going to fall into, as you say, the next normal, and then it will just be normal. Just takes time, right? It's just that mental gear shift. And the technology is almost, while it's important, while it underpins that, it's almost secondary. First, you got to get your head there, and then the rest will follow.
Yep, agreed. Good. So if there's any questions from the crowd, if you can put those submit through the live chat.
I think we're clear for now. I don't see any. Yeah, don't see any further questions at this time. Well, listen. Yeah, sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I appreciate the time, the invitation from Intermedia to just kind of have an open forum and talk about what we see and share some insights from us and some of our business partners. We you don't want to you want to help our customers adjust to the new norm. I mean, this was a market that we were both involved with for the last several years. Work from home has been a big part of our technology deployment for many years now. So I think we can help be part of the solution and enable really true human connection in a remote manner. I mean, I think that's even Poly's great tagline is enabling human connection. So
I wish I'd written that.
Yeah. Well, my marketing team would be proud. I thought of it. I forgot it was attributed to Poly. So anyway, but I appreciate the time, and Intermedia can get us in contact if there's anything that Poly can do to help stimulate any activity, any support in local regions. Love to continue to help drive our support for Intermedia in the market.
Awesome. Well, much appreciated, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
There's a couple questions that came in through the attendee chat.
Okay.
Great.
One of them is, can you talk about the headsets and differences of the units?
Sure. So if you look at the options for headsets, there are a lot of decision you have to help your customer through. One is wired or wireless. Do they have a job where they're going to be really sitting, they're going to be stationary, and a wired headset is really the preferred method? Because typically a wired headset will be a little bit lower in cost, and it can be, you don't have to worry about wireless connectivity. Anytime you bring in a little bit of wireless connectivity, there's a little more management that has to be given to that. So we have a very, very wide variety of headset options. The four models that Intermedia has decided to tightly bundle with the application. I mean, a lot, they all work, but the ones that Intermedia is really bundling in are 2 wired and 2 wireless headsets. The Blackwire line, and the other criteria is beyond wired or wireless is wearing style. Do you want 1 or 2 ears covered? You know, and that's may sound trivial, but do you want the focus in the passive or active noise reduction that having 2 ears covered is, or do you need to have 1 ear open so you can hear your surroundings? You know, depends on, you know, if you're, you know, depends on that. That's a personal preference thing. So for each of the Blackwire, for the Blackwire, which is the wired headset, and it supports soft client, any IP phone. You know, it's the, when, you know, it's a very well deployed wired headset in the market, and you know, and very cost effective. So, you know, that's another criteria. Then our Savvy line, which is the decked wireless option that Intermedia is taking to the market, you know, that actually has really a 3 channels you can use. It has a RJ connection that goes to the phone. It has a USB that goes to your soft client, and it supports Bluetooth to your smart device. So you can take a call on any of those mediums, and it can be answered by one headset. And the advantage of a decked headset, we also make a lot of great Bluetooth headsets, but the advantage of decked over Bluetooth is that it's a little more secure. Decked is a little more deterministic, and it can go a much further distance. So if I'm on a decked headset, I can walk, probably depends on your building or your home, but you probably walk 50 feet or sometimes 150 feet away from your PC. So it has a much, you know, much greater range than like say a Bluetooth. But again, we probably make 50 different styles and options. Intermedia picked really the top 4 just to help simplify that decision, you know, criteria. So yeah, so those are some things to think about when you're selecting a headset for your customers and working through it. But other, you know, but really wired or wireless and wearing style, and then, you know, kind of go from there.
Yeah, I've always been. I don't have it on right now, obviously, but I've always been dual ear. It's a focus thing, as you said, right? It's just distracting when there's the background noise. So yeah,
and everyone has different you know, over the ear, in the ear, USB C or A. I mean, there's all sorts of things to think about, right, when selecting the phone. But another one is the active noise canceling, like in the Savvy line specifically, where we have really not only the passive noise canceling by having your ears covered, but also the active noise canceling technology to, you know, to actively filter out surrounding noise. So I think that can really help with focus.
Yeah, huge difference.
Yep.
All right.
Was there another question?
No, actually, the other question was just a comment. It said, thanks, guys. Very helpful and informative. Cheers. So okay. That's all the questions that have come in.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate you joining. And we wish you an excellent rest of the day from both of us.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.